Hey, did you miss me? I took a few days off. Do you know why? Because I was triple recording my podcasts last week. There was a lot of stuff to cover, and even some stuff happened after I need to put myself into a meditative trance. But when I removed myself from the meditative trance, who was there with me? Millard Thomas. That's
Hey,
right. It's time for a crossover. Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. You can look at my lower third. You don't believe me? You can call me Sully. But hey, I'm not alone. Look at this guy right over there. There's my co-host for today. Introduce yourself.
hey, Miller Thomas, host of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24. It says they're right there in my lower third. That's my personal account. Or just type in that little search bar, Locked On Diamondbacks, on Twitter, Instagram. You can find me there. And also on YouTube, please. We're trying to hit 300 subscribers by Christmas. So follow Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube as well.
Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. If you want to follow me on Mastodon, good luck. I can't figure it out. If you want to follow me, my personal account, I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Follow us on the YouTubes. And also, you can type in Sully Baseball if you want to follow my in memoriam videos that I do at the beginning of each year. I used to do them at the All-Star break, but starting with COVID, I do it at the beginning of the year. And there's already some big names are going to be in the upcoming in memoriam video. We've got a couple of Hall of Famers, Gaylord Perry, the Bruce Sutter. We have Maury Wills, who probably could have been put in the Hall of Fame. And then you have Vince Scully. You know, So this it's going to be quite a in memoriam. Probably will not be the one I did for the season that started in 2021, which I decided to pull out all the heartstrings. I start with an image of my dad, who'd also died at that time. But that we had the number of Hall of Famers we lost that year: Tom Seaver, Lou Brock, Bob Gibson, Phil Necro, Tom Lasorda, Don Sutton. We lost Dick Allen, who should have been in the Hall of Fame. We lost Whitey Ford. We lost Joe Morgan. We lost Henry Aaron. I mean, every one of those is a end of the montage showstopper. And I'm going like, oh my God, I gotta stick Tommy Lasorda in the middle. Good Lord. I mean, it was, I mean, it was just unbelievable. So I don't think we'll ever have a year where we lose that many people at once. But you know what? The Reaper's undefeated, and every once in a while he says, "Hold my beer."
Was that 2020 you said, Sully?
The one that began the 2021 season. So what I do is, and everyone who died between opening days, are included in that.
No.
So, everyone who basically died between opening day 2020, opening day 2021. Last year, there were no Hall of Famers died,
Oh, wow.
which was interesting. I mean, I had some very memorable names like, Ray Fosse and Jerry Remy and
Oh, yeah.
J.R. Richard
M-Dog.
and, Mudcat Grant, a lot of, really great baseball names. We did lose along the way, but anyway.
Yeah, I
Talking
know.
about
I was gonna say I know we're gonna talk Red Sox later, but that broadcast team, I mean, no more Rem Dog. I think Dennis Eckersley just left to the broadcast studio. So even that, like growing up as
Yeah.
a kid, is done.
Yeah, and they lost. They didn't lose. They let go Don Orsillo a few years
Yeah, Don
ago.
Orsillo too.
I
Yeah,
mean, look at. I mean, it's
that's when
uh,
we should have known really when they let Don Orsillo go. That was the
yeah,
start.
and you want we'll get into this right now actually because look at I have a very I make no bones about it. Some people have accused me of bias. I don't deny that. I have biases. We all have biases. I don't claim to be a Vulcan, but at the same time, I also I try to be objective. If I did grow up a big Boston Red Sox fan, I've never hidden my dislike of the Yankees. But if the Yankees do something right, I'm going to praise them. They did something right last week by bringing back Judge.
Oh yeah,
That was there was the chatter of, is he going to go to San Francisco? Is he going to go to this? Is he going to go to that? And the fact of the matter is, they did what they had to do. They realized that if you remove that Jenga piece, there's just, the whole thing will come down crash.
Everything.
And I agree with Stacy Gotsulias of Locked On Yankees that this is not the end of their offseason. This is, they had to take care of this. And by taking care of this, and they have Rizzo and they have Judge and everyone back there, so now they can focus on improving the shortstop position, improving their pitching staff, getting a little depth in their staff. And I think that they're going to be there. So I'll praise them and I'll criticize the Red Sox. I have a lot of issues about the Red Sox. Look, the management came in before the 2003 or 2002 season, the new management, and since then the Red Sox fans wanted to see one World Series in their lifetime, and there have been 4.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you want to take away 2018 for the shenanigans that were happening off field, that's still 3 more than we thought we were going to get in our lifetime. And so, and for that reason, there's so much to love about this management. They've delivered so much. On the other hand, they sometimes don't understand some things about fandom. And what they were developing in 2018, which has now been almost completely destroyed. When they won in 2004, there was a sense of urgency. We have to win right away to just get this monkey off of our back. And there were a lot of mercenaries on that team. There were more homegrown players in 2007, but in 2013, it was almost entirely mercenaries. It was almost entirely people who weren't there the year before and were gone the year after. But that was the Boston Strong year and everything. What made the 2018 year different, besides the cheating, was there were so many homegrown superstars that Red Sox fans were thinking, oh, wait a minute. This could be our answer to Bernie Williams, Derek Jeter, Jorge Posada, and Rivera Pettit, the proverbial core, that here's a core of young players came up through the farm system that will stick around forever. You had a completely homegrown outfield of Bs, the Benintendis, Bradleys, and Betts.
Yep.
Betts was an MVP superstar. Devers was a developing superstar. Bogarts was an all-star. Christian Vasquez was a solid catcher. You had this whole lineup of homegrown players that, oh my God, this is going to be the promise of what happened in the 70s of Rice, Lynn, Evans, Burleson, all them. And to rip that apart because of money, of which the Red Sox are swimming in money, to me, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm not going to blame Bloom. A lot of people are blaming Bloom. He's taking orders from the front office. And it's the management who doesn't seem to realize they stumbled across what could have been the most beloved Red Sox team of all time if they kept them together. And there was no reason not to keep them together. And they always seem more interested in other teams' free agents than maintaining their own. But it just drives me a little crazy. Don't you see what you had in your hands? And this does feel different than when Damon left or when Pedro left or even when Francona was let go. There's something about this that feels different. Like, you had a core. Why didn't you keep this core together?
Yeah, and I think it also speaks to the type of players that they're letting go. When you think of the Mookie Betts and you think of the Xander Bogaerts, they're not just great players on the field. They're not just the MVPs like you talk about the Mookie Betts and the multi-time All-Stars like you talk about the Xander Bogaerts. Talk about what they do in the community, how Mookie Betts is such a big advocate for Black players in baseball, how he's a big advocate for other things in the social community, about Xander Bogaerts, how he gives back. And the fact they let these guys go, like right now, if you're a Red Sox fan, like your spirit is crushed. You lost the trust of this front office. You lost the trust of this ownership group. And it's like, yeah, you got those 4 World Series like you talk about, but if I'm a Red Sox fan right now, I'm pulling a Ross from Friends and I'm taking a break from this team. And I'm okay checking out other baseball teams right now if I'm a Boston Red Sox fan right now. Why not check out the Arizona Diamondbacks with that young outfield that they got and say, hey, let me start something new, because I don't know what to do. It's only going to get worse if you're a Red Sox fan from here, because Rafael Devers is either going to get traded this offseason or he's going to walk in free agency, because we're going to go through the same situation that we just saw with Xander Bogaerts. You got Trevor Story on that fat contract. contract. He's already showed signs of really being a terrible deal. Chris Sale still owed a lot of money. We still don't know how good the Japanese player is going to be, but according to like the market value, they might have just overpaid. Like he could be a good player, but that doesn't mean he was worth the contract that he was given. Like it's only going to get worse from here if you're a Red Sox fan. So I'm like, just jump ship now and come on over to the D-backs.
By the way, I want to address something here from Yuri, who is a listener here, who wrote something on the YouTube page. He
Okay.
said, "I love the podcast." Now, I'll just set this up. When Bogart signed the lucrative deal that he signed for, I think it's what was it
11.
300? Was it 400 years? It was 400 years.
Mm-hmm.
He got signed for it. He said he's going to be signed there till until the seas rise up and destroy us all.
Wow.
He'll still be under. It's a long deal. It's a long
Yeah.
deal. And in a vacuum, I understand. As I said before, in the free agency area, I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite because I have said that if you played 10 years with one team, you really can't ask for more than that in the free agency era. And he was part of the 2013
He's
World
been there
Series
for a long
champs.
time.
He's been there for a long time. So in one way, I could say, do you know what? You had a decade with him, and 11 years is a long time,
Mm-hmm.
especially in baseball years. But as I said, if the Padres win one World Series at the front of that contract, the end of the contract, they'll just be chump change. But I made a comment saying, how could a small market team like the Red Sox possibly contend with the big spenders like San Diego? I said that. Yuri posted this, a public comment, so I don't feel badly
Wow.
reading a public comment.
Gonna
I love the
expose Yuri.
I love the podcast. Thanks, Yuri. I probably should just stop right there. But calling the Red Sox a small market team is a huge exaggeration, and I'd say even incorrect. He proceeds to explain why it's incorrect, and I will agree with you, Yuri. That was called sarcasm. I was being sarcastic. That was kidding. It was a joke. The Red Sox are one of the wealthiest, not only one of the wealthiest teams, but they also have a gigantic market. They have not just the city of Boston, but the entire region of New England, everything Connecticut north of New Haven, all of Rhode Island, all of Massachusetts, all of all of Connecticut that isn't on the Metro line to New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and also schmucks like me who can't let go and have moved. Like we're spread around. We're like should build a wall to keep us out of your state. Because there are all these Red Sox fans who can't let go. There's a gigantic market, and San Diego is a microscopic market. I was making that was it's explain the joke Monday is what it is. I was hoping the joke was so absurd that but the reason I'm bringing it up is that I heard that comment and I said, you're it was a joke. It was a joke. It was a joke. It was a joke. But then I saw a Twitter exchange, and I'm not going to mention this person's name because he did take this, when he was called out, he did take this tweet down. But someone who was in a little Twitter argument with former Locked On Red Sox host Gabrielle Starr was saying, how can the Red Sox compete when they only have 37,000 seats and they won't ever be able to have the revenue to compete with teams that have bigger stadiums? And I realized he wasn't kidding. He was trying to make the argument that the Red Sox are a small market team. First of all, I didn't know it was 1922, not 2022, because we have other revenue other than the gate. But also, have you seen those seats at Fenway Park? Kind of costly.
Are they? I need to
Kind
go
of
to a game.
costly. You can go to a game at Petco Park for a decent price, a lot less than Fenway. And Fenway is usually pretty sort of packed. So I couldn't believe someone was actually trying to use the Red Sox are a small market team argument. And unlike me, I realized maybe that's why I have to show that it is a joke, because some people out there are trying to make that argument.
Yeah.
Which I find a little strange.
Yeah, I really don't believe in small market teams. Honestly, I just believe in ownership, at least when it comes to baseball. I believe any team could get any free agent if you're willing to pony up the money. You look at Mets pre Stephen Cohen when they were dirt poor. You look at them post Stephen Cohen, they're out there going and just spending money like it's no tomorrow. The Mets are spending so much money in this offseason. And just the overall point on like long-term deals. I know when you sign a 10-year, 11-year deal like you just did with Xander Bogaerts, the last 4 years of that deal is going to be an albatross contract. But sometimes you just got to think about it in terms of being a real life human being and just a fan. I want to see Manny Machado, Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis Jr., and Xander Bogaerts in their prime for the next 5 to 7 years. If I'm a fan, I'm a dude currently 25 years old. If I get to see those guys for the next 8 years of my life, entering my early 30s, what more do I want as a fan than that? If I'm 60 years old, that's good. That could be the rest of my life. I get to see that core. Like sometimes you get too caught up in the numbers. We get too caught up in the years. And just think about as a fan, what do you want to do with the next 7 years of your life? Do you want a stacked team with superstars in your lineup? Or do you want to be like, oh, I don't want to pay that dude $30 million a year in 2035? Like what really matters to you as a fan? That's my biggest question I got.
And for the Padres to build a connection to a sports fan base, they just had their football team taken away from them, that have never had that big, huge moment to say, guess what, San Diego sports fans, we're going to try, we're at least going to try to put a product on the field. And not only that, but when you show up to the ballpark, and Petco Park is one of the best ballparks in baseball,
Oh,
when you
yeah. It's
show up to the
rocking.
park for the, for the next bunch of years, Machado will be there, Soto will be there, Bogarts will be there, Tatis will be there. And look at, do I think they're going to win the World Series every year? Of course not. That would be insane to think that. But with this team put together, I don't know. I really think it's a surefire bet that they're going to have a really great chance to win at least one. If you're going to make any bets, you go get that overlay on there right now. It's betonline.net. It's your number one source for sports betting info, and stats, and news and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to the World Cup and esports, got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, if you're listening to my voice right now, chances are you do. You can find those at betonline as well. They've always got the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix on. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online. Do you know what it is? Guess what it is? It's where the game starts. You know, we talked about San Diego in the NL West.
Mhm.
And, lest we forget that they got to within 3 games of the World Series last year.
Yeah.
And they have one of the best managers in baseball who, as you and I were saying, the man has whiplash right now because, wait a minute, you bring in stars? I thought you only trade away stars. I think, there are two managers out there who, like Dusty Baker, have done everything but win the big kahuna, and they are Showalter and Bob Melvin. And I think that they're the two managers right now that, if they win a World Series, may join Dusty Baker in the inevitable Hall of Fame discussion. I think Melvin, first of all, San Diego is not a bad place to be.
Oh, not at all.
I've nudged my kids to apply to UC San Diego. That gives me an excuse to go to a few Padres games. But you go live in one of the most beautiful cities in the country, and you have an ownership that is saying, "Hey, we're committed to giving you not just one good. We're not going to pull a 1997 Marlins, push all the chips in the center for 1 year, win, and then break it apart. This team is going to be together for a while." And if they win the World Series in the next year or so, they'll be able to take victory. They'll have so much goodwill in the bank. They'll be able to take victory laps with those players who, all of a sudden they'll be retiring all these Padres players' numbers. It'll be the greatest moment in Padre history. Tell me, because you focus on the NL West big time.
Yeah.
The Dodgers are obviously the class of the National League West, at least in terms of the regular season. The San Francisco Giants, I never thought they were as good as 107 wins a few years ago, but I also didn't think they were as bad as 81 wins. I think they're probably a high 80, low 90 win team, especially if they pull a signing of another good starting pitcher. And I think while it's a long shot, I still think they have a shot at Aaron Judge. But that was a joke. That was a joke. But you have the Giants, you have the Padres, you have LA. There are two other teams there. You
Yep.
have the Rockies. Who else is in that division?
Oh, the D-backs.
I think the D-backs are going to be a very good team in 2024.
Okay.
I'll say
That's a
that.
serious
I,
take.
I think they'll be a fringe wild card contender in 2023.
That's how
I
I feel.
think that they have enough talent on their team that I personally think they should consider. I think they should consider a reunion with JD Martinez, quite frankly,
Ooh, I like
because he's not going to be the JD Martinez from 2017. It won't cost you that much money, and you need. I think you need it's funny. I think the D-backs and the Marlins are in similar positions where they need, if they can just bring in a couple of veterans to sort of take some of the pressure off the young kids and allow them to develop. I think Arizona has a ton of young talent. I just don't think they're there yet. But I think they have a shot. I mean, we all saw how they played the second half last year. They
it.
have a shot to win, to have a winning season. If you have a winning season, you have a shot to be one of the wild card teams. But you do have three good teams in that division that are ready to contend right now. Obviously LA, obviously San Diego, and obviously San Francisco. LA has been weird this offseason. They've been kind of laying in the weeds. They lost Trey Turner. Now, out there is still Correa, and there's the thought of, ooh, will Dodger fans accept Carlos Correa because he was part of 2017? They'll accept him when he starts hitting the ball out of the ballpark, making diving plays, and helping him win a title. It's amazing what can happen when you actually win. Do you think the Padres are in a position now to overtake LA?
Yes, I do, because also I'm not sure if the San Diego Padres are done yet this offseason. They
Mhm.
might be sniffing around the waters for a starting pitcher. Maybe a Carlos Rodon stealing from the Giants. I don't know. That would be a fat deal. That would really be spending money because Rodon might be seeking like a 6-year, $30 million annual deal. So he might get a fat deal. Maybe go after, you tried out Sean Manaea this past season. Maybe go after another former Oakland A's starter who's on the free agent market, and Chris Bassett to round out that rotation. That would be really nice for the Padres. So I definitely think they have the lineup to do it. And if they could add maybe one other rotation starter, they could definitely take the NL West from the Dodgers, because when you look at that Dodgers roster currently, they have lost a lot of pieces this free agency. We already know about the Trey Turners of the world, but the Tyler Andersons, the Andrew Heaney's, the Chris Martins, the Cody Bellingers, the Justin Turners are still out there, the David Prices, the Joey Gallos, the Craig Kimbrells. Like, there's a lot of players off their roster from last year that are either signed by other teams or out there in the free agent market. So for this Dodgers team, I'm not too worried about them. I still think when you look at that rotation as it currently stands, it's still pretty stacked with the Walker Buehlers, the Julio Uriases, the Clayton Kershaw's, the Tony Gonsolins. Like, they're still going to have a great rotation. They're still going to have a great bullpen. But the lineup right now, as it currently stands, will take a little bit of a step back from last season. You still got Mookie Betts. You still got Will Smith. You still got Freddie Freeman. But maybe the Dodgers aren't as impeccable and as invincible as we might have thought. And maybe the Padres have really closed the gap between those two teams, because as it currently stands in the division, I think those two teams are way better than the rest. I think those two teams are their own tier, because right now, Sully, I'm not going as far to say the Giants, like, you have a lot more belief in the Giants than I do. I currently think the Giants are on the same tier as the Arizona Diamondbacks, because I
Really?
look at that Giants roster and tell me who you are afraid of in that lineup, in that rotation, in that bullpen, outside of a Logan Webb and maybe a Jock Peterson. You go up and down that lineup. There you have Evan Longoria out as a free agent. Brandon Belt's currently a free agent. You need Joey Bart to really progress and have a bounce back season, but I don't see the talent really in that lineup. They went out there, signed Mitch Haniger. I do like that move for their lineup, but outside of Peterson and Mitch Haniger, like Mike Yastrzemski really had a down season. Who in their rotation, if they lose a Carlos Rodon to free agency outside of a
True.
Logan Webb? Like, I just honestly don't see the foundational pieces on that team. I don't see the young players coming up through the system. on that team currently on their roster that I would even be afraid of. So as it currently stands, at one point during the month of September, the D-backs actually passed the Giants in the standings. So I wouldn't be surprised going to next year, the D-backs finish the season with a better record than the San Francisco Giants.
Do you know why I'm laughing right now?
Why are you
Because
laughing?
you bring that up almost every show. That at one
Oh,
point,
yeah.
in fact, they're gonna have to raise a flag
Just do it. It's
and
a
in
banner.
Arizona says like for at one point we passed the Giants. And
It was like a 36-hour period where we were third in the NL West standings in the month of
look
September.
at I think the Diamondbacks are doing all things considered. I think they're building up the right pieces, and I think you're gonna see some of those players, some of those young players who are and I hope they keep Marte. I really do. I'd like
Mhm.
to see
I
him
think
be
they
the
are.
center. I think they'd like to see him be the centerpiece of the team now that Goldschmidt is no longer the centerpiece of the team. Yeah, the Giants could definitely regress. The
Mhm.
Giants could definitely regress. I just when they won 100 here's why. I have more belief in their front office than I do in their manager. But when they won 107 ball games in 2021, I watched almost every game of it, and I didn't know what I was watching. I'm like, how is this team winning 107 games? These pieces, like the sum, was so much larger than the pieces of the whole. So I just trust, especially because they have money to spend. I trust that they're going to find the right pieces to insert into that club. The Dodgers are so strange because they had statistically their best regular season in their history this year, at least in terms of winning. And when this run for the Dodgers ends, and all runs end, okay, I'm not saying they're going to become a last place team, but this particular even the great Yankee run recently came to an end, and there was a few years where they couldn't make the playoffs, and then they retooled. But this run with Los Angeles will eventually end. It probably will end with the retiring of Kershaw, who's been there since they went to the '08 NLCS. I think you're going to look back at 2019 and this last year as the 2 years that got away.
Mm.
When they lost that game 5 to the Nationals, when they had a lead in the 8th inning, and Will Smith hit that ball into the gap in the 9th inning with a runner on first that Soto ran down. If Soto doesn't run that down, that hits the gap. The runner comes in to score. No one remembers the Washington Nationals, and the Dodgers probably absolutely demolish the Cardinals and probably win the World Series. This year, if that goose doesn't land on the field in game 2 of the division series against San Diego, because they won the first game handily. If they had beaten San Diego, I think they would have beaten the tar out of the Phillies, and I think they would have beaten the snot out of the Astros.
Wow.
Tar and snot. But I think when this run is over, it's kind of like when you look back at the great Braves run, and they did win the World Series in '95. But there were a couple of teams along the way that were a lot better than the '95 team. The '93 team was incredible. The '98 team was incredible. And I think could look back at those years. Those are the years they probably should have won. And the LaRussa Cardinal years, their two worst playoff teams were the ones that won the World Series. So I think this run, it'll be frustrating if they only win one World Series, especially a year when they couldn't even play at home. The one year they win, they're not even allowed to play in Dodger Stadium, which is one reason why I think this franchise really wants to win another one. But they may not. I think this last year, everything was lined up. Everything was opened up like a giant oyster for the Dodgers. That the Padres eliminated the Mets. They didn't have to face New York. They wouldn't have to face Atlanta. Everything had been opened up to them, and they still wet the bed. Um, the thing that makes they're a strange sleeping giant right now because they have a lot of money to spend, the huge market, and a real desire to win another title, and they haven't made the big splash yet, which makes me wonder: are they waiting for a Dansby Swanson or something? And by the way, I'm not counting a minor league signing of Jason Hayward as a major signing. I don't get their off season right now. I really don't.
Yeah, and another ring would bring some validation because people like me do not really like that 2020 Mickey Mouse ring too much for the LA Dodgers. More specifically for Clayton Kershaw because he was so terrible throughout his entire playoff career. And then all of a sudden, you take the fans out the stadium and Superman's all of a sudden on the mound for Clayton Kershaw. So I really don't like that ring too much for him. But for this Dodgers offseason, it's been, I mean, it's just been a lot of rumors and reports, but we actually haven't seen them commit to anything. And maybe they're just very picky about who they want. They're just very picky and choosy. Like they went out there, they got the Freddie Freemans of the world. They traded for Mookie Betts, but guys like Trey Turner, guys like Manny Machado, they didn't want to commit to those 10, 11-year deals for those type of players. So maybe they're more picky and they really pick and choose who they want to go after in those kind of scenarios. And for this Dodgers squad, like eventually all runs come to an end. I look at that 2020 postseason run where you get to the championship series against a wild card Braves team, and maybe that's the one where you get the rematch against the Houston Astros, and then this whole thing gets validated. I mean, and I mean, if the Dodgers ever got back to the World Series the last couple of years, they would have had a rematch against the Houston Astros, which would have been kind of fun for them. But this Dodgers team, I'm never going to be worried about them because they do such a good job of like internal development from their minor league system. Like they know how to develop prospects, which not a lot of these big market teams know how to do. Like when you look at the New York Yankees, we're still waiting for all these young players that they have to actually materialize and become like the next Derek Jeter, as they always like to say. But for the Dodgers players, they actually know how to develop these young guys like Will Smith and turn them into stars, or they know how to go out there and scout and pick up players through the trade market like Chris Taylor's that are just hidden gems. So for the Dodgers, I'm never going to be worried about them long term just because they have such a machine going, kind of like the Houston Astros. They just always know how to plug and play these players.